Hi everybody, it's Sierra Bigham here. I am loving all of you and missing you this weekend, certainly missing being on the farm with everyone. But I'm coming to you here today from my little farm here in Kingsley. Some of you probably know me from being up on the hill slinging popcorn by night and tea and salve and maple syrup and honey by day. I usually lead some herb walks on the farm during the harvest gathering and also during the skill swap in the spring. So today I would like to do a little herb exploration with you, talk about some of my favorite plant friends, and also talk about the topic of reciprocity and what that means in our lives and in our interactions with the plants. So I'm starting here today next to one of my dear friends, Elder, and I thought this would be an appropriate place to start because the last couple of weeks I've been taking care of one of my elders. My grandmother is here living with me and been caring for her end of life, and it has been a very humbling, expanding, challenging, beautiful experience, and I've been really leaning on my friend here, Elder, for support during this time, both energetically and also for building up the immune system and just staying strong through the stresses of it. So I'd like to talk about the plants today, though, in a little bit less utilitarian way, and really just honor who they are. I think in our language we've lost a lot of the language around plant relationship, and so much of the way that we talk about plants now is based around what they can do for us or how we can use them, or what we learned about them on Facebook, but we don't really talk about who are they. And they're living, sentient beings with feelings and interacting with their environments and perceiving this elder here can feel the vibrations of my voice and is responding to this energy exchange. So I would say for me the best way that I've found to get to know either a plant or a person is to erase all of my preconceived assumptions about them, right? And just spend time with them, observe them, listen to them. I like to ask myself when I'm talking with or about plants, remind myself that plants are people too. And so ask myself, would I talk to another person that way or about another person that way? For instance, I hear a lot of people talk about plants and, even when I'm doing herb walks, well, what's this plant good for? How can we use this plant? And what did I learn about that on Facebook? What did so-and-so say about that on the news or on that TV show, And I just think, well, what if I went up to somebody that I was just meeting for the first time and I said, hey, what are you good for? How can I use you? And what can you do for me? And what did I learn about you on Facebook? It's not really a nice way to get to know somebody. It's also not a good way. So instead, we might say, introduce ourselves and do a lot of listening and observing. And one of the best ways that I've found to do that with plants is to draw them. It's a really good practice to get into our observative mind. And through drawing plants, I've noticed how many things I've assumed about them, and so many things that I never really did notice. And usually when I draw the plant, it's definitely not for art's sake. I've never hung a single one of these drawings on my wall. Typically, all I'll get done is like one little leaf structure, because I'm looking for detail and I'm looking to really observe here. So some things I might notice in drawing this plant are, its leaves here are very serrated. The leaflets come off opposite each other as well as the leaves. But if we go down to the leaf level, the veins are coming off alternate. If I look here at this stem that has been cut, I can see that it has a hollow stem, which tells us a lot about this plant. Also knowing it and seeing where it grows, I know that it likes to have its feet wet. It likes to grow near water, and having a hollow stem helps it do that without rotting. It also is a wonderful elder to the other plants around it. It is actually believed that it is an elder to the other plants. That is definitely a belief in the local indigenous culture, is that it is a teacher. So it teaches the other plants growing near it how to behave, what's maybe coming next, and also how to be healers. So one of the best things about elder is it's a protector of not only energetic spaces, but also it's a bioremediator. So when it's growing in the water, it's sucking that water up and purifying it and making the whole area around it cleaner for everyone else. Now, that being said, if you're going to harvest it, you want to keep that in mind and not harvest it from an area where it could be absorbing toxins. It is also a really protected plant. I have spent a lot of time harvesting elder, and I would say probably 90% of the time there is some really protective plants around it that make it really difficult to harvest. Most of the time it's poison ivy. It really likes to grow near poison ivy. This summer I got so excited. I found the most beautiful big elder bush full of flowers in perfect bloom, and there was no poison ivy, and I thought, oh, I've hit the jackpot. So I trudged down there, I got really close to it. I got just a few meters away, and it's thistles. Every square foot was these tall, so pokey thistles. I just had to laugh because I thought, oh, it was not going to be that easy. It wouldn't make it that easy. So it's a really good protective ally, and it's used a lot in folklore for divination purposes. It's used to be a very traditional wand making plant. It's used for dowsing, for finding water. So a lot of kind of magical purposes there. I have really just loved spending time with this plant and propagating it. That's been my favorite way to interact with it. It grows really well by cuttings, so you can actually take a cutting and get it rooted out and start them. And anywhere, if you have water on your land, it's a really good plant to get going. There was a national or international shortage of elderberries the last 2 years. So it's just a sign of the times. We all need this medicine. We need our elders. So plant some elders. I think I'd like to just kind of walk around the farm with you, and we can find some other friends. So we'll see what else we find. This is one of my very best friends. This particular white pine and white pines in general. This one is a very good climbing tree. As you can see, there are plenty of opportunities for hand and footholds, and you can climb almost to the tippy top of it. So it's a really nice place to just get away, hide out for a little bit. But I've had a lot of really beautiful experiences with white pine, and I would love to share one of them with you that has been one of the most beautiful healing experiences in my life, and also probably the biggest experience of exchange of reciprocity with a green being that I've experienced. So about 5 years ago, I was living in Keewaydin, just north of Elk Rapids, and I had 2 beautiful white pines in my yard there. They were even bigger than this. And one was right outside my bedroom window, and the other was maybe 10 yards away. And in the one 10 yards away, there was an owl that lived. And we just developed such a strong relationship with those white pines over that time. And then one day, the excavation company behind our house came, and they said, the property line is actually here on the other side of all of these beautiful big white pines all along this edge. And the one that was on my property happened to be on the other side of the line that they were making. So they indicated that they would be by to cut it down. And we watched, my son and I watched out the window as they came with a big, sawing machine and just sawed it and lifted it right out. it was really sad. We cried, we watched, we were deeply moved by it, saddened by it. It was a big loss for us. So we went out to honor the tree. We offered some tobacco. We sat with the tree stump. We scraped some of the sap that was coming out and made medicine with it. Some infused honeys, just collected the sap for wound care or for respiratory treatment later on. But it was not until later that day that all of a sudden it occurred to me, oh, the other white pine, its sister, must really be grieving and mourning. I need to go, offer some support for her. So I went out and I just hugged her, and I could feel this grief coming into me, and it was much more than my own grief over the loss of this other tree. It was equivalent of the loss of a sister. It was so deep, and I was just sobbing and sobbing for hours, and I could feel that grief from the tree just coming through me. And I was acting as, a channel and a friend for that tree as it was mourning. And it was a really beautiful experience. A couple days later, I ended up receiving a song from that tree, a white pine song. And then it was maybe about 3 months after that I experienced a big loss in my life and was really having a hard time grieving. I was having that type of grief where it just feels like it won't come out, like there's just so much. What can I do with this? I can't hold all of this. And I was up in my bedroom, which was, just a few feet away from this tree, the remaining white pine. And all of a sudden I felt this wave wash over me, and I could feel that grief being lifted from my chest. And I realized it's the white pine. And the white pine said to me, I'm helping you with your grief like you helped me when my sister was killed. And it was one of the most beautiful, profound experiences that I've ever had. And I've always had a really deep connection with white pines, but ever since that day, it's been a really deep one. And I think it was a really beautiful testament to me of connecting with plants and how they really are our allies and can really show up for us. It was a beautiful exchange of reciprocity, and it was also a really good reminder that white pine is such a good medicine for grief. And the white pines have had a similar history on these lands here in Michigan as the indigenous people have, right? Before the settlers came, these lands it was said that a squirrel could travel from one side of Michigan to the other without touching the ground on the tops of the white pines. It was white pines 5 times bigger than this. All forests of them, huge elder white pines. And the revenue that was accrued from the harvest of all of those white pines actually outweighs the entire revenue of the gold rush by $1 billion, which is just astounding. So we have the white pines to thank for many of our buildings and towns and schools and the ships that brought everything and people over here. So really an integral part of the history here. But I see a lot of similarities there, and I see that this tree really is an ally in experiencing the grief of these lands. I think that we can all feel it, whether we recognize what it is or not. I think that we're all feeling the healing that needs to happen on these lands, and the white pine is one of my favorite ways to use the gifts of the white pine for healing grief is to make a steam with the needles. So I would take about maybe 5 to 10 of these sprays here at the end, or hands, and put them in a pot, fill it up with water, put it on the stove or the wood stove if you got yours going this time of year yet, and let it, even just filling the house with the steam was really nice. I've been doing that all week here, having my grandmother here, not only just for purifying the air, but she's in a lot of pain. And white pine is a wonderful herb for pain, and so even just inhaling the polyphenols from the needles can really help as an anti-inflammatory. Actually, there's been research that people that live near pine trees on average live 2 years longer, just from breathing in the air that the pines release. So you can also, if you're really feeling like you have a lot of grief, the grief is generally stored in the lungs. And so oftentimes when we have a lot of deep grief, it's hard to get it all out. And sometimes it can manifest later on as chronic lung conditions or just respiratory congestion. So doing a steam where you're actually intentionally breathing in the steam, maybe putting a towel over your head and gently breathing in that steam from the white pine can help to clear out not only phlegm and crud from the lungs, but also some maybe underlying grief or emotional processing that's been stored there. I could talk about white pine for another 6 hours, but I will leave it at that for today, and we'll move on. See what else we find. This is a really fun plant. This one always reminds me of like another world or something. It's almost like from a different planet. This is poke, and as you can see here, this is a huge poke. This plant has been here longer than I have, and I've watched it get bigger every year. The stalks this year are, this big around. It's just really incredible because this plant grows new each year. So this is all this year's growth. It dies back to the ground each year. And we have the berries here are just perfectly ripe. These are a wonderful natural dye. So you can crush these up and dye, clothing with it or paper. You can freeze them for later use. There also is definitely a need for caution with this plant. So these berries are toxic. Pretty much every part of the plant is toxic, and we can use it medicinally, but it's in very, very small doses. So traditionally, in the Anishinaabe culture, it was, maybe one would eat one berry a year to help prevent arthritis. Also, an amazing lymphatic herb. So I generally don't eat the berries. I treat this plant with a lot of respect and only use it when it's absolutely necessary, but in very, very, very tiny doses, and I'm talking 1 drop of tincture, not a dropper full, a drop of tincture of the root can help give us a poke that we need if we are feeling stagnant, if our immune system's not firing up and responding to illness like it should. Then we can give it a gentle poke with, or maybe a not so gentle poke with poke. This plant, though, I wanted to talk about it today because in one of our most recent Reciprocity classes here, one of the exercises was to sit with a plant and draw it, like we were talking earlier, with a complete detail. And I got, about half of one of these done in my little drawing there. And then we were to go back after doing a drawing of the details of the plant and draw what we perceived the spirit of the plant to be. So this is kind of flexing both muscles, the deer mind, open, keen observation, and then the human mind, which just loves to make meaning and assumptions and kind of find reference to everything. So it's kind of like the hot cold plunge idea, going back and forth. It can really help develop both of those sides of our brains so that we can have more of an integration there. So it was a really fun practice. The spirit drawing part of it I found really moving, and I don't have the photo, but or the drawing, but I'd love to show you. It was very poke. And when we were supposed to kind of sit with the plant until like 3 words or a little mantra came to us from the plant. And the mantra that came to me from poke was, I'm not going to quote it exactly here, but I'll do my best. Something to the effect of, my medicine is neither good nor bad. It's all up to the recipient in how it is received. And I loved that, and I've been saying it to myself too, and also just reminding myself of that with everything that's going on in the world right now. So many heavy things that could be easily looked at as bad or wrong or absurd, atrocious. I mean, there are lots of words that we could use to describe the state of things. And it's really neither good nor bad, because there's also all the blessings that are coming from this that we may or may not even be able to see right now. And so it's just a good reminder that we get what we look for, and that everything can be good medicine, or medicine at least, if we treat it in the right way and have a good relationship with it and receive it in a way that is healing. So really good reminder here, and a beautiful, beautiful plant friend to have growing. Keep walking, and oh geez, I have to just stop and show you this. This is the lamb's quarters plant. This is the biggest lamb's quarters I've ever seen. It's much taller than I am. It's my token lamb's quarters here. This is usually a much smaller plant, and it's a very common farm and garden weed. It's one of my favorite wild edibles. It is about 2 to 3 times higher than kale in almost every vitamin and mineral. It is a great source of calcium. These seed pods here, 1/2 cup of these seed pods is 200% of our daily calcium need. And it's very bioavailable because it comes with all the other vitamins and minerals we need to absorb and utilize calcium. I have actually, the last couple of years, just been freezing these leaves and seeds, not blanching them or anything, just stripping them off, putting them into a freezer bag and throwing them in the freezer. And then you can pull them out later and use them in soups or stir fries. They're delicious. They're not really very bitter. They're tender. So if you have any growing nearby, I encourage you to do that. It certainly was the plant that got me through the lockdown period when I had very little food left over from last year and not going to the grocery stores. I pretty much lived off of lamb's quarters and felt pretty good. So, yay, lamb's quarters. Here we have a beautiful patch of goldenrod, which I'm sure you've all been enjoying along the roadsides, the fields of gold. There are actually quite a few different varieties, and goldenrod is a native plant. A lot of people don't know that. It's also not the cause of your allergies. That would be ragweed. Poor goldenrod gets the blame because it's beautiful and big and bright this time of year, and it's actually pollinated by ants, so it's not even wind pollinated. However, the ragweed is short and discreet and has pollen like a torture device that is green and you hardly can see it, but ragweed, or goldenrod, is actually an antihistamine, so you can stop blaming it and start letting it help you. There are actually a couple varieties growing right side by side here, so I'll show you. We have this one here has a long kind of lancelet shaped leaf, just tiny little serration there, but not too much. This one is more of a quilted appearance with some lobing here on the sides, so pretty different leaf shapes. But they both have bright golden flowers, and the flowers always grow up off of the top of the stalk like that, so it's a really good indicator of goldenrod. One of my favorite things about this plant is it's a communal plant, so it grows in patches and it spreads underground, and I think that's part of the reason that it has been able to just let the train. I live near some railroad tracks. Okay. I was saying, I think that's part of the reason why, as a native species, it's been really able to continue to thrive, is that it relies very much on its community. So I like to take that message from it and remind myself that we all need each other to get through. Also, one thing about this plant is it is perfectly blooming and ready to harvest right when we need it most. So this is a wonderful, like I said, allergy remedy. It's also a really wonderful ally to the kidneys. So it helps restore the adrenals, which is so important after the height of summer. Most of us this time of year are feeling some level of burnout, right? The gardens, everything needs to be done right now. The impending fall weather coming, you know, we're all kind of feeling that last push. And many of us might be feeling a little bit tapped out and in need of coming back into ourselves, putting our roots back in the ground, bringing that energy back into more of a yin, introspective space, and nourishing those adrenals, nourishing the kidneys. So one of my favorite ways to work with this plant is to make teas this time of year when it's ready. You know, you can just harvest it fresh, make a little tea, enjoy it. The different varieties have different flavor profiles, so that can be interesting to play around with, but they're all good for making tea. You can also make syrups with it, so I like to add it to my elderberry syrup to add a little bit of an antihistamine. It can also help with pain, anti-inflammatory, really an amazing plant with tons of benefits. But one thing I would like to talk about is its relationship with the asters. And I wish that there were some asters growing here right now, but there are not. But often you will find it growing with asters, and they bloom at the same time of year. And if any of you have read the book Braiding Sweetgrass, then you might remember the chapter here on asters and goldenrod. If you have not read that book, I recommend that you pick up a copy and put it on your winter reading list. It will be one of the best books you've ever read. And so the chapter there then, and what the author, Robin Wall-Kimmer, is talking about is that the goldenrod and the aster have this really beautiful relationship where they're blooming at the same time and they're exact contrasting colors. And this is a really great benefit for both of them. It's a mutually beneficial relationship in that it actually attracts more pollinators to both of them, having that bright color contrast. And I think that's a good lesson for us to remember, that sometimes our biggest differences can actually be mutually beneficial and healing for both of us. So if you are taking out fall walks, keep an eye out for that beautiful yellow and purple, and can maybe find some pollinators out there enjoying them. All right, we'll keep walking back here towards the little pond, and would love to visit our friend Willow. Okay, stop it. Here we are with willow, beautiful, beautiful willow. There are many types of willow. In talking about willow, you can interchangeably use them. Of course, they each have their own unique specialties and personalities and differences, but we can pretty much use them interchangeably as far as harvesting goes. So one of my favorite things about willow is its ability to root itself wherever it's planted. In fact, even if I bent over this branch and crushed it down put a rock on it, it would just put more roots in. Just keep growing. It's a wonderful aid in rooting. You can actually make like a compost tea with it. Just put it in a bucket, fill it with water, let it sit for a few weeks. Smells really bad, but that's how you know it's good. And then you can use that to root other plants. So it teaches other plants and us how to put roots in wherever we are and to become adaptable and grow in challenging circumstances. Another one of my favorite things about willow is its flexibility. So when it bends, it doesn't break. And I personally, and I know pretty much all of us this year, have been asked to bend a lot further than is comfortable. And a lot of times that can bring pain. Willow's an excellent remedy for pain. It's actually has the same compounds as aspirin. It was one of the inspirations for our common drug, our current drug aspirin. It is still just as effective without all the negative side effects. Takes a little bit longer to kick in, but just as or more effective for treating pain. And you could make it with the bark, but you can also make a tea with just these twigs and leaves here. And that's an easy way to harvest and be kind to the tree and really get some good medicine out of it. It's a very bitter plant. So using it in like a tincture, an extract, and chasing it with something, that's usually the best way. A tea is a little bit hard to swallow, but if somebody is sick, then you can give them a tea of this and they will get better very fast. I don't know if it's the willow or the fact that they do not want to ever have to drink that tea again, but it works. I have learned a lot from willow this year on tolerance. And for me, it's been a really good teacher in trying to be tolerant and understanding of all the different viewpoints. We've had a really challenging year as far as there's a lot of divisiveness within our country and our communities right now. And I think that for me, willow has been a really good teacher in just when I think I'm being so rigid, that's when there's conflict. That's when I'm not able to really see somebody's viewpoint. So when I feel that rigidity, I think of willow and I think of how it bends and it flows, and even if it gets cut down or pushed over, it just puts in new roots and it just keeps growing and adapting. So I think it's a really good teacher in these times. And one of my favorite ways to use it internally for that purpose is to make a flower essence with it. So that would be made in the springtime. I would say it's safe to bet that the next year might be also challenging, so we might want to all get out next spring and make some flower essence with this beautiful plant to help us in that way. But just spending time with it is a really wonderful way to learn from it. And it's a wonderful friend to spend time with. Weeping willows are wonderful to sit under. And anywhere you're near willows, you're near water. It's again a bioremediator. It's pulling out toxins from the soil and helping cleanse the environment, providing habitat for lots of critters. Really, really wonderful friend. So I was actually coming over to talk with my friend Maple, but I had to stop here at the autumn olive because it is so plentifully full of autumn olives right now. And if you've never eaten these, I encourage you to. They're edible, they're not toxic, they're a favorite of the birds and they know what's up. They are super high in lycopene, which is often found in tomatoes. It's a really great anti-cancer component. It's a really wonderful source of antioxidants. They're actually quite high in fatty acids, which is not common for fruits, especially in northern Michigan. So a really wonderful ally for us through the winter. One of my favorite ways to consume these is actually to make fruit leather with them. So I harvest a bunch and I kind of crush them through a colander or a food mill, get the seeds out. And then I usually combine them with like ground up apples or grapes because they're quite tart. So they blend well, and then lay them out on a parchment paper on a baking sheet, throw them in the oven on super duper low till it's all dried out, and it's like homemade fruit roll-ups. So really fun and tasty way to enjoy them. I'm probably in the minority of people that love this plant. Most people don't like it. Some people actually hate it because it's invasive, considered invasive. But invasive plants really are just messengers. Usually when an invasive plant shows up in an area, it's because there's ecological imbalance. So it's kind of like, don't shoot the messenger. Just by killing this plant, we're not really establishing ecological balance. And we're neglecting to appreciate the gifts that it offers. It's actually a wonderful bioremediator. It's a nitrogen fixer. So it pulls nitrogen from the air and puts it into the soil. So it's utilized by the other plants. It's also a wonderful food source for a lot of wildlife, especially in the fall, when a lot of the other berries and things aren't available anymore. Kind of a funny story about this plant, I did not know until this year that it has thorns. And apparently, now that I know, I can see them. Yeah, there are actually quite sharp thorns all in here. But it's so funny, I've been harvesting this plant for, probably 10 years, and I've never been poked by a thorn. I had no idea. I was on an herb walk. I was leading an herb walk on a woman's land, and I was like, oh, let's talk about autumn olive. She said, I hate autumn olive. The only thing it's good for is poking you with those thorns. And I said, it has thorns? And she looked at me like, who are you? Who am I paying to teach me about plants? You don't even know autumn olive has thorns? And I said, no, I didn't. I've enjoyed its fruits. I've enjoyed everything about it, its flowers. But no, I guess I never even saw it. And once she pointed them out, now of course I can see the thorns. But just a reminder of we get what we look for. And I've just been appreciating all its gifts and never even knew. So I wouldn't worry too much about them. I've harvested a lot of autumn olives and never gotten poked by a thorn. But it's a funny story. So one of the best ways I think that we could help control the spread of this plant, if you want to do that, is I encourage one of you out there who needs a business idea to start making superfoods out of autumn olives. You could make fruit leather or jams or juices or dry them and powder them. They truly are a superfood. And the best way to control the spread of them might be to harvest all the berries, and people actually pay you. So you get paid to harvest them. They're a wonderful treat for all of us. So love your autumn olives. That's my unpopular message. Here's a beautiful friend, maple. We're a little bit by the road, so I apologize for any traffic, but this particular maple and I have had a really great summer together. Maple is often referred to as the queen of the forest, or the teacher of all the other plants and trees, kind of the great mother in the plant kingdom. Certainly is a very nourishing tree for us. We enjoy literally its lifeblood. It's like a nursing mother for us, right? In the spring we tap them and we get that sap, and it's very nourishing for us, very sweet, just like a mother's milk. And this maple and I had a really cool experience. So it was again during one of the Reciprocity classes we did here. One of the challenges was to go out and write a letter to a tree or a plant, and this letter would be written in the kind of the candid form of writing a letter to a friend. And then after we did the writing of the letter to the plant, we took a little break, and then we went back and we had the plant or tree write a letter back to us. And that was quite a challenge. I found that I learned a lot. I was humbled. So in my letter to this maple, I actually was kind of feeling bad for it. I was apologizing for it being so near the road and all of the trucks going by and the liked growing here, and would it prefer to be in a forest or a field somewhere. And it wasn't until I got the letter back from the maple that I realized how weird that was. Because what the maple said was, don't feel sorry for me, it brings us all down. When you see me and see me thriving, it lifts us all up. And it was just such a good reminder that that's so true with each other too, right? It feels so good to be seen in your strength, even when you're feeling maybe not so strong, or maybe in an undesirable circumstances, or not ideal place. But this maple's just happy to be here. It's happy to have the opportunity to thrive where it is with the circumstances it's been given. And it's just really helped me in healing thoughts in myself and about the situation in our world right now, and not taking that on as so much of a weight and a burden and a terrible thing and a grief, but really just seeing those blessings again. Finding the gratitudes and thriving wherever we are. So one of my favorite things to do during this time of no hugs, which has been incredibly hard for me. If any of you have seen me at the harvest gathering, you've likely gotten a hug from me. I always joke that that's my whole hug quota for the year, and this one weekend it's like so many hundreds of hugs, and I'm a big hugger, so not being able to hug a lot of people has been the hardest part of all of this, I think. But what I've been doing is sending hugs through the mycelium web. And you can do this, but I'm going to send you all one right now. So this is a very scientifically proven method. We know that messages can be sent through the mycelium web faster than our current internet system, and the mycelium web reaches everywhere. So I'm going to send you all a great big harvest hug through this maple, and you can pick it up anywhere, your nearest tree. You can just go out there and give it a big hug and pick up that hug and send some to your other harvest friends or family around the world, and just tell them they can pick it up at their nearest tree. So until next year, I am so loving all of you. Stay strong, stay well, know that we're in this together, and hug a tree.